What's happening, you guys? I tried to find a shady spot out here. It's a beautiful autumn day here in coastal North Carolina, and I want to come on here and update you about some blood work that I got early last week, and was waiting on the results, was waiting to update until I had those results and could share them with you guys. It's been interesting. I am now entering my 4th week of ketogenic eating. It's 3 weeks in the past of ketogenic eating paired with alternate day fasting. The weight loss has slowed somewhat, but it is still stable, and I'm definitely not gaining. So that's the good news. I had, for the first 2 weeks of keto, I felt very tired at certain times. It was kind of like, I really think it mimicked the sensation and the physical sense of my extended fast at the end of August 2017, where I would just have periods of weakness and then periods of energy and strength and feel better. And things in the 3rd week of keto really seem to sort of stabilize. So I've been enjoying that, more stable energy and, great sleep the whole time that I've been on keto. I've had good sleep. And so really all that was left was to go to the doctor, talk to the doctor about the keto, the low carb eating, and get some blood work to see where things are at. So at the time that I got the blood work, I was only into this thing about 2.5 weeks into ketogenic eating. But I will share with you what my life experience has been so far. It was funny, the other night I was snuggling up to my wife. We were just laying in bed talking, and I was getting a little free with my hands, and she said, "Ooh, what's that?" And I said, "My hip bone." And the reality is my hip bone, my wife probably hasn't felt my hip bones in like 20 years, and she can kind of feel them. She didn't say whether it was a positive or a negative thing, but the next thing I'm looking for is ribs. Yeah, someday I might see ribs on myself. Some of you hot shots are out there trying to see your abs and stuff like that. I'm never trying to see my abs. I know there's probably abs underneath all this blubber, but I'd be happy to see my ribs again. So, but I've got pokey hip bones, so good for me. The weight loss is continuing. Ketogenic eating is fun. If anything, I think in the first 2 or 3 weeks here, I've been a little tempted to overeat. And I think the reason for that is I'm just trying all these different recipes and scoping out what I like and what's possible on the ketogenic diet. I had one night when I tested the limits of my fat adaptation. The whole 3 weeks I've been in keto, I've been in ketosis, and I know I have. I'm peeing ketones in my urine, so I know I'm good. But there was one night where I said, I'm just going to take in some fruit. I'm going to take in some fructose and see what happens. So I had a bunch of sweet sapphire grapes, and I ate a Honeycrisp apple, just a small one. But a Honeycrisp, if you know your apples, it's a man-made, man-bred variety, and it's bred for its sugar and its sweetness. So it's not anything that God or Mother Nature made. It's just something to appeal to Americans to get them to buy more apples and eat apples by making them super sweet. So I tried one of those. Next morning, I was still in ketosis, and ever since then. So it was kind of good. I'm an experimenter, and you have to test the limits of things to see what your body does and what it can handle, and I'm a believer in that, as you guys well know. So I've got a little bit of leeway there. That's what I found. I've got a little bit of cheatability with this ketogenic eating. I can have a few carbs and not get knocked out of ketosis. So you guys have seen pictures here recently in my videos, and you can look right at me. You know what the exterior looks like. Let's talk about the interior of this body for a minute. That's what blood work tells us. Our state of metabolic health. And so I had blood counts, I had metabolic panel, lipid panel, checking for cholesterol and triglycerides. Because I'd been having some fatigue, I asked the doctor to check my thyroid, just for any indicators there that anything might be going on there. And as far as blood counts, red blood cells, white blood cells, etc., really nothing to say there. Everything was within normal limits. Same with the thyroid. I don't have any thyroid issues to speak of that they know about that came out in the blood work. Now the metabolic panel, I'll throw this up here so you guys can see some of these numbers. I'll shoot a picture up here so you can see some of these numbers here. What I want to point out to you, there's not a whole lot to say except that my the electrolytes that they tested for are in a good range. Nothing really problematic to speak of. But if you look there for ALT and AST, the last blood work I had back at the end of March showed some elevated levels. And that's significant because these are two enzymes that if they're present in higher levels in your blood can mean liver inflammation, liver damage, and so that's why I kind of like paid attention. That was the one thing in my blood work last time that looked abnormal, that worried me a little bit. I was like, oh my goodness, I knew I had a fatty liver. So I was like, what's going on with this liver? And kind of spooked me a little bit. And so, but if you look now, both of those numbers have fallen back down into normal ranges, which means that whatever inflammation or damage is happening or has happened as a result of my poor choices for 4 decades is on a path towards reversal. And you know, I'm going to keep scoping it out. I'm going to keep getting blood work every 6 months as I'm required to do, but that was good news. That means that whatever's happening, whatever inflammation was happening, you know, the fasting and the ketogenic eating are hopefully reducing those numbers. The other thing I'll say is that my blood glucose level was 73. Fasting blood glucose was 73. And that's the lowest number I've ever had. I usually am in about the 100 range. So, you know, that's no surprise really, but it's good to know. Okay, so on to the lipid panel. And this is the one that concerns me because I have a family history of high cholesterol. My dad died when he was 56. Of course, he abused his body with many substances that I won't go into here, but you know, when you have a family history of high cholesterol, people with heart attacks, cancer, stuff like that, you pay attention to this a little more. And I've actually been on Lipitor, a statin, atorvastatin, since I was in my mid-20s. So throughout the whole last 2 decades of my life, I've been on Lipitor. And my current dosage was 40 milligrams, which is a pretty high dosage. So when I went to the doctor, part of what I was hoping to do is to get some numbers that were within the normal range, where I could argue him back off of that Lipitor a little bit. And so let me throw up these numbers for you here on the screen so you can see what's up. And the first thing you're going to notice is that my total cholesterol number has gone up from back end to end of March. It's gone up to 225, and if you look over there at LDL-C, it's gone up to 158. And both of those things are outside they're higher than the normal range. The good news is my HDL has gone up and my triglycerides are still very low. So what does all this mean? I've been alternate day fasting for 6 months. How is it possible that my cholesterol has gone up? A lot of you would probably be very discouraged if you got this sort of result or this information. And I want to tell you why it encourages me. It's basically confirmation to me that my body is right now in fat loss and fat burning mode. Okay? Because for some individuals who lose weight rapidly, their cholesterol goes up. Okay? The keto haters and the keto naysayers out there are going, see? We told you, Steve, you're going to die. If you go and eat fat, you're going to end up wearing it. You're going to line your arteries with fat and you're going to die. And this really shows a ton of ignorance. I had one person who said that the fact that I was losing my appetite on ketogenic eating was the same thing as a chemotherapy, someone who's taking chemo. The sickness of chemo. Can you imagine the level of denial you have to be in to compare a diet that people lose weight on? There's evidence that cholesterol indicators are fixed and metabolic problems are fixed on ketogenic low-carb eating. What level of denial do you have to be in to say that that's like the sickness that patients with cancer and chemotherapy go through? And it's just as staggering, some of the stuff that people say. But Let me tell you why this is a good thing. This means that my body is releasing fatty acids into my bloodstream. It's burning the fat that's in my storage. And when it releases that fat into the bloodstream, that is the reason why those LDL will go up, the total cholesterol will go up, and statins like I take, Lipitor, atorvastatin, will not fix it because it's coming from inside my own body. So if I lose 10 pounds, and I've lost a lot more than that in the past 6 months, but if I lose 10 pounds, that's 35,000 calories that have been released into my bloodstream that are there. So what's this mean? It means that, well, first off, cholesterol is a complicated issue. Interpreting cholesterol results, even doctors are sometimes like, well, I don't know. You know, there's some things they don't measure for that would be really helpful if they would get, and they just don't. Like the particulate, the LDL particulate, like how much LDL, small particles, are actually in the blood. They don't usually check for that. But that would be important to know. That's actually a real risk indicator. But what this tells me is that this is a temporary thing. Whenever my weight stabilizes, whenever I stop losing weight, my cholesterol should stabilize. My total cholesterol, my LDL, should stabilize and decrease. If they don't, if for some reason they don't, then it's time for me to look at diet a little more carefully. But as long as I'm losing weight, I'm doing everything I can. And that's what my doctor said. You're at the point, Steve, where you're doing everything you can to control your symptoms, to fix the metabolic syndrome, to fix the cholesterol. You know, my doctor has enough sense to know that when you're losing weight, and your cholesterol goes up a little bit, you're just one of those people where there's that much of the fatty acids in your system and the weight loss is that rapid that there's a temporary spike there. And it's nothing to be concerned about. It's not like you need more Lipitor. He still cut my Lipitor in half. Even with the higher numbers on the cholesterol, he still cut my Lipitor in half. So that tells me, and it just tells me that my body is burning fat. It's burning fat. It's in fat burning mode, and it's just going to burn fat. And so I'm stoked about it. You know, I'm not upset, depressed, and so it's just something I haven't heard many people talk about. And I'll put a couple articles in the description, just in layman's terms, that kind of describe this idea that you can lose weight, and your cholesterol can go up temporarily, and that's something that people need to know who are dealing with high cholesterol or familial blood cholesterol. But all my other cholesterol numbers, the good ones, the HDL, the triglycerides, all those things are looking really good. I'm very encouraged by my blood work. Everything is normal. My liver is starting to look better. My cholesterol is evidence of the fact that my body is in fat burning mode. And so, you know, I don't have anything negative to say at this point. Other cup takeaway, my blood pressure is normal. You guys will remember, if you've been following the channel for a while, that my blood pressure had been creeping up and creeping up and creeping up for the past 3 or 4 years. It had just been going up and going up to the point where it was pre-hypertension. And so, you know, the way I left it with my doctor in March, I said, well, if I come back here in September, at the end of September, and my blood pressure is still high, then we'll talk about medication then. But let me try to get my weight down. Let me try to do some things. And that's what I did. And I did it through alternate day fasting. I got my blood pressure down. I got my weight down, 70 plus pounds. And my blood pressure is normal, and I do not require blood pressure medication. So, you know, it was funny, just interesting talking. When you talk to the doctor, a lot of times you go in with your questions, you end up asking questions. This time the doctor was asking me the questions. And he's like, well, how'd you do this? And what kind of exercises are you doing? And I told him about rucking and, you know, walking and sometimes jogging with a weighted pack. I told him exactly how I was eating and the sort of strategies I was using and the body hacks that I was using in terms of intermittent fasting to lose the weight. You know, right now I've gone from, in the past 6 months, 7 months, however long it's been since I started fasting, I've gone from being in real trouble medically, physically, to turning the whole thing around. The whole thing is on the, you know, I have routed the forces of evil that were at work in my in my body, and they're going the other way. Everything is going in the direction it should be going, and so that's why the doctor was interested, I guess. And although I did stump him because I asked him about a CT scan that's done on the arteries of the heart called a coronary calcium scan or test. And I asked him about that, and he was like, I don't even know about that. Which goes to show you that there are evil, big pharma, big food, there are evil companies at work. Basically, the coronary calcium scan is an indicator of whether you're going to have a heart attack and how likely you are to have a heart attack in the next 5 or 10 years. And they just take a picture of the arteries around the heart, and if they can see a lot of calcium deposits, you know, that's a higher score. And he didn't even know about this. It cost about $100. Most of the time, insurance won't pay for it. And I asked him about it. I said, I'm 42. Maybe I should have this done, being that my dad did die of a heart attack, and just to see how things are going. It's just another indicator on top of all my blood work. Right now, I don't have any risk factors other than the cholesterol that's spiked up. But he didn't even know about this thing. You know what they know about? Stents going in through your groin, up through the arteries of your heart, invasive procedures that cost $9,000. That cost $8,000 or $9,000 to get done, and then they go in and they push the balloon up in your heart to open up arteries. You know, the whole scope, angioscopy in your heart. Way more risky, costs way more. He knew about that. He didn't know about the less invasive indicator. So he told me he would check up on it, and maybe that's something I can get in 6 months when I go back for my other blood work. So he told me to keep doing what I'm doing. Whatever I'm doing is working, he said. Keep doing what you're doing, Steve. So that's what I'm going to keep doing. And so I'm happy. My wife is happy. It looks like I'm going to be around for a good long time to make videos, to talk about this lifestyle, to help spread awareness, and to be a pain in the bahakas to some people, obviously, because they want me to die. the people, the naysayers out there that just say, oh, you're going to die, the people who say you're doing fasting wrong, they would love it to come back in 6 months or a year and I'm just not here anymore. I'll be here, you guys. That's what I have to say to you today. Be encouraged, pursue health, pursue joy, and do what works for you. Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we fast.